In this video, we look at rectangular columns, and these are your normal columns you would find in buildings. In further videos, we'll be doing the circular column and thereafter irregular shaped columns. So with these, really the easiest way to model these are using custom components because they are so regular, and there are a few caveats which we'll get to during the course of this video. So let's just start. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm going to go into Control P in Plan. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select these columns, the two on the corner here, two objects, right click, fit work area to all. That will give us, if we go home, a nice view just on those. And now obviously we can see these little openings and stuff because we're showing our parts as monolithic. So if we double click in our window, we go to display, we can, under settings, we can go to the cast in place parts and show them as separated. If we then say modify, apply, OK, modify, apply, OK, we will then get them as separate parts, and for the visual we can see we get a better look. It will not show monolithic though when you butt the pieces up together. But for the illustration of this is good. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to head over to the applications and components catalog, and in here we can type, I've already typed it here, but if you type in reinforcement, it lists the components that involve reinforcement. And if we scroll down a little bit, we'll see there's one number 83, that's rectangular columns. So if we pick that one and then head over to our column and just select the column, it will reinforce that column with the default settings as per the custom component. So let's just have a look at how that component actually works. And I'll just rotate slightly here so we can get a better visual. So the first thing we're going to do is, I think, let's go over to the View tab and open our plan on 0. And I'll go Control P so we can see what's going on there from the top. And again, in this one, actually, I'll just leave that. And then also, let's get a visual on grid line 1. So if I head over to grid line 1, we can see an elevation of what we see there. And then I can select both those columns and say fit work area in all views. Right, so we've got an elevation there, we've got the plan at 0, and then we've got our 3D rendered view. So let's head over to the plan and see how we can manipulate that column. So what we want to do is we want to start out with having a reinforcement in each one of the corners, but also having one in the mid of the stirrup, and then have a diagonal stirrup inside. I think that's what we're going to aim for. And then for the elevation, what we're going to do here is the norm, definitely here in Australia, is that over your lap length. So if you can imagine, you've got your starter bars coming out of your foundations in here. Over the lap length, you have these stirrups spaced at half the spacing of the normal stirrups, the ones in the middle here. And then we will have on the top, they normally have 4, 3, or 2 sets of leakages at 50mm spacing or so. So we'll do something like that. So let's just start on the top. I'll double click the component to open the component dialog box, and let's just start from the front. So in here, we're going to manipulate the corner bars. So in the symmetrical conditions, if we look at this tab, this allows you to fill in values. So you can see at the moment it's got a question mark on all 4 of the corners, which means we can specify a different bar size in each one of the corners. I'm going to hit for the first one because we want all 4 of our corners to be the same. You can see it disables these 3, so we only have to put a value in here. And for that, if I click on the asterisk, I can head over to the 20 main bar. And then also for the class, I'm going to make them blue, class 4. And I think I'll just settle for that, and I'll say modify, and you can see how it's changed those 4 bars. And then for the sidebars, which is the new bars we want to introduce, again, yeah, we've got all kinds of options here, but we're just going to settle for the 2 sides. So in here, we're going to add 1 bar, and in here, we're going to add 1 bar. And if we say modify, we can, okay, it hasn't placed it. Let me just set it in the center, modify, There it's placed it now. So we've now got a bar in the center. So all we need to do now is we need to go over to set one and also pick the 20 main bar and make sure that our class is a 4 like the others and say modify, and that will change all four of them. So they're all the same now, and that's the sort of configuration we're aiming for. Now the next thing we need to do is head over to the bar ends, and if I click on the view here and just tab across to the layout so you can see what we're doing here. So in here, what I will do is, first of all, we do want a crank. So in the top corner direction, we've got options here on how we want that bar to look. So cranking is definitely what we want. The cranking dimension, in other words, how Tekla is going to measure how this crank. So you can either have from the outside of the concrete to the inside fold, or you can have from outside to outside of bar, or from middle to middle. So this is probably the best choice. And for a 20 millimeter bar, a 20 millimeter bar is got a deformed actual diameter of 23, and what we need is 2 times the bar diameter. So 46 is good enough for these. If you say modify, it will apply that. Then lastly, what we need to do is look at the crank position itself. Well, second lastly is the crank position. So we want the crank, the rule of thumb for the cranks are normally 10 times the bar diameter. So this is a 20 millimeter bar. So 10 times that's 200. So what we do is, in this, we've got several ways of measuring it here. The top one is the one that I prefer. So we want to start 0. We want the crank to start at the top of the column because the column ends at the bottom of the slab. So that's 0. And the crank length, we want 200. So that is the default setting at the moment, and it so happens to be the one we want as well. So lastly is the lap. So a 20 millimeter bar has got 1,000, a 1 meter lap. So we'll have lap on the 2 side bars and on the corner bars of 1,000. So that is also the default setting, but it also is the one that we want. Okay, so once we've got that, on the bottom bars, we don't have anything. So we can see there's no values in here. We didn't fill in any values for the bottom, so there's no cranking at the bottom. So that sort of deals with the main bar. So what we can do now is head over to the stirrups. So if we go to the stirrups, now these stirrups work in zones. As you can see here, there's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 zones starting at the top to the bottom. But we only require 3. It's the number 5 at the bottom, number 3 in the middle, and number 1 at the top. So what we're going to do is, the first thing is, for the cover on the top, I'm going to make that 50 just to give us a bit of space to work for at the top. And at the bottom, I'm going to make it 100. So if I accept that, modify, you can see we've got 100 millimeters at the bottom, 50 at the top. And the reason why I do that is because the gap at the bottom, normally they would like a kicker in here, and to start the main bar, and we'll just start the leakages somewhere above that. So I'm just sort of placing a 100 millimeters. It works well. Now, in terms of our lap length, we've got 100 millimeter, and we've got 300, and we've got 100 again. So this is not right. What the engineer wants is a 200 main spacing. Modify. That will change that middle field. And for the bottom, should be half of the main, and that's 100. That's correct. And because we have, this is number of bars, because we have a meter, we need 10 bars at 100. So 10 is correct. And then at the top, we only require 4 bars. And those 4 bars we only want at 50 millimeter spacing. So if I say modify that, we can then see how this changes. So we've got 4 bars at 50 on the top. We've got the middle section spaced at 200 and the bottom section spaced at 100, which is half of the main spacing over the splicing area. Now, the next tab here deals with the materials as such. So if I hit spiral here and I say modify, it will turn that into a spiral, not good for square. If I change this to this one that shows sort of multiple ranges here, we can see we have different grades in here, all enabled. So we can specifically, if I just say modify that quickly, and I'll show you what I mean. If I go to the class, say for instance a 2 here, and a 3 there, and a 4 here, and I say modify, we can then see we've got 3 different colors here. So we can specifically use different size leagues in the different zones. But That's not what we normally do. What we normally do is we say we want all the leagues to be the same material, so it disables all the others, so we're only left with one group here. And what we can say is we want this league to be a round bar, which is plain bar, and we want it to be an R10 tie. And then for the class, we want to use 5, and I think that's good. If you say modify, that changes all of those, and that pretty much deals with the leakages. Now, the intermediate links, there's a lot of information out there, and if we hover over to the top, we can see at the moment we're specifying clips on this, and the reason for that is because of this selection set. Yeah, it says we want clips. If we click on this and we say we prefer ligatures and we say modify, it will then turn that into a ligature that ties the intermediate sidebars. And if we look at this little zone here, it says a clear zone. So in other words, if there were bars within 160 from that edge, it would then skip that bar and go over to the next bar. If I, this distance is about 240, I guess, but if we put in a value of say 250, then we say modify, it will actually just eliminate the leaks because our aperture is too big. So if we go back to 160 or anything less than 240 or 230, it will put the ligature back. Now, while we're at the ligatures, if we just look at the settings here, so this one's got an ear. So if we just go back to the stirrups quickly, it shows an ear here. Now, there's a bit of a caveat here because if you click on this one and you pick this default setting which shows an ear and we say modify, it will actually show you a 90-degree lap here. I think that just might be a bit of an error that needs to be looked at, but if we do select the first one that shows an ear in the series and say modify, it does actually give you an ear. Now the same applies with the intermediates. If we go to the intermediates and we head over to this tab, you can see it's by default it's got the ears here, but if you say modify, it shows the overlapping corner. Now if we just click that one and go down to the ears, this one, and we say modify, you will get the sensible ear. Now that pretty much deals it. The top reinforcement deals with bursting steel. So if you need to reinforce a cage on top for bursting steel, maybe it's, you know, there's a bearing or something on here that carries a bridge or something like that, you would need these bars, but in this case we don't, and it's the same with the bottom. We don't have any bursting steels there. And then lastly, we've got rebar assembly. So if this is a welded cage or a prefabricated cage and you want to send it to a drawing as a cage to be fabricated, you can turn this into a create rebar assembly. And remember, this is from Tekla 2022 upwards. You can, but in this case we're not going to do it. So when I'm happy with that, I'm going to say modify, apply, OK, just to make sure that the setting is now saved in that. And then what I can do is I can just enable the component again and click on the column above. Oh, I didn't enable that. So if I click on that, click on the column. Oh, it's because you won't see anything that I've inserted twice now. Let me just delete that. It's because I'm in plan 0. I don't have a full view, so I'll go back to the 3D mode. So if I click the component and click on the column, I will get my reinforcement in the top. So now what we can do is I'll go over to this and kill that one, and then what we can do is view list. We can head over to the next level, and if we look at that, we'll see both of them. Actually, this doesn't show you the slab, so maybe we'll only deal with the slab part. So what we can see on this one is the first thing we can inspect is to see if our laps actually worked out. And as we can see there, it's perfectly butt up against that, and it is using the bigger diameter of the bar, so it will work on site. If you're not comfortable with that, you can allow a little bit more. You could maybe go 2.5 times the bar diameter. But I have worked with 23 as opposed to 20, which is the deformed size of the bar, so this will work. Now on the top here, obviously this is poking through the top, and imagine this is a roof slab, so all we need to do in this component is change that. So if we double click the component on top here, what we need to do is go to our bent ends, and instead of the top corner direction, instead of looking for a cranked bar, we can now select say for instance a hook, a cog, and if we say modify, That will make it straight because we still need to fill in some values. And if we go to the extension, so the vertical extension of the bar, we don't need 1,000 anymore. The slab is at 200, so if we go 150 inside the slab for both the sides and the corner, if we then say modify, that will bring them down. And then if we hover over to the horizontal extension and we go in here, now a normal cog for a 20 bar I think is 150 millimeters. That's the straight portion, and then we still need to add the 50 for the radius. That's 250, and then the bar diameter of 23, so that's 223, but I'm just going to make them 250 because that's a more sensible dimension. So 250 on all of those, and if I say modify, we get our tie into our slab, and that sort of completes this first column. Now in terms of the second column, and what I'm going to do here is just show entire column, and yeah, as well, entire model. What I'm going to do in the next square column or rectangular column, square column, is do that as a manual exercise. And the reason for that is I want to show you that in the case, I mean, it's probably not needed in this case, but sometimes when things are very congested, the engineer might ask you to alternate these ears. So these little hooks on the legs, they might alternate them, having one this side, that side, this side, that side, with all the others. Now you can't do it in this component. You can also not do it with rebar groups. You can, however, do it with rebar sets because of the end modifier, and also with the splitter. So let's manually detail these and see how we go. So if I go Control P and then select those two columns and say work area in all views, that will isolate those so we can see what's going on. The first thing I'm going to do is, if I hover over to the plan, is I'm going to draw a bar that looks like a crank bar as a single bar, and then rotate it around. Remember, this is a manual exercise. Now you would not necessarily do it here, but I'm going to show the workflow in case you ever need to do something like that. You will know how to do it. So if we go single bar in this case, and again we'll hover over to our property pane and just make sure that our settings are still correct, so no hooks, and in here we can just zero all of these, zero all of these, no hooks, and we just deal with the bar. So the first thing that Tekla is asking is pick the part. So what we're going to do is we're going to pick that part we want to reinforce, and then the shape. So we need to do a joggle bar or a J bar or a crank bar as it's known. So what we'll do is we'll start at the bottom there, right on the edge, and we go up to the top of the column, and then we go to the top, to the soffit of the slab, top of the column, then the start of the next column, top of the slab, and I'll just keep them straight now. We move the nodes now, and then up. I'm just going to hover 1,000 because that's the lap. And once I've clicked that one, I can middle mouse. That will give us the bar. And then what we can do now is just quit out of that command, and we can go over to the 3D. But maybe in this case, what we can do is bring back our plan 0, and then say Control P, and obviously it still remembers the previous state. So we go entire column, and in here we can just say take this and say in all views. Okay, so we're back to where we were. Now if we look at this, we can see that is because of the on plane and from plane was set to 0 and the start and end was set to 0. It's actually drawing that thing exactly where we want. And if we look at this little blue line, that is actually the plane of the bar. That's the plane that that the shape is drawn on. So if we go back to elevation quickly, you can see there's that plane looking in elevation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold in my alternate key and select those two handles there. And then I'm going to say right click, move special linear, and I'm going to make sure the X, I want to move in the X direction, but I want to use a negative, and the distance I want to move is the thickness of a bar. Now this is a 20 bar, so it's got a 23 thickness. So if I go minus 23 here and say move, you can see how it cranks the bar. So now that bar is cranked. And if we look at the plan again, we can see where that bar is positioned. What we need to do now is in the from plane settings, we keep it 0 because we want the bar there, but on the on plane settings, we want to put a cover in there. Now, this cover could be a negative or positive, and we'll have to figure that out. But what we're going to do is we're going to have a 25 cover to the ligature, and then we've got a 10 millimeter ligature, which gives us 35 millimeters. So if I put in a 35 there, I can see it's moving it to the outside of the column. So if I make it negative, it pushes it to the inside. So now if we look at the elevation, we can see that bar is nicely inside there with enough to have the cover to the, if I just click on it, you can see we've got 35 cover as a negative, but it's actually a positive in this case. So what we can do now is to grab this, make sure that our XY is in the global axis, grab that bar and say right click, copy special, rotate, then pick the middle grid and say we need 3 extra copies at an angle of 90 degrees and say copy. And that will place the other intermediates there. And now, since we've got this bar, I'll pick the bottom one, we might as well do the diagonal. So what we'll do is we'll take that one, right click, copy special, rotate, pick the same origin, but this time we're only going to have one number of, and we're going to copy this at 45 degrees. And we're going to say copy, and that will give us a diagonal in that position. So what we can do now is we can take this diagonal, and we can say move linear, ML on my keyboard, and we can pick this point and move it into this corner. Make sure that we're only moving in the X and Y, not in the Z. And if we say move, we get that bar there. Now the only thing we need to make sure here is that that bar, if I just draw a construction line from that bar to that bar, and in that bar to that bar, we can see that this is pretty much going to be the center where this one needs to go to. So what we can do is if we click on that, we can increase the cover here to, I'm just going to guess, let's say 50 millimeters for now, modify, and just leave it at that. So we're slightly off. We might have to come and do a little bit of adjustment when the ligages come, but that's easy enough. So I'll just delete those 2 construction lines. And then what we can do is we can click on that one again. Now you can see how the plane is diagonal, because the reason why I did that is because now we get these, let me just, you get the crank going inwards rather than, perpendicular to the side of the column. So if I click on this one now, again, we can just go right click, copy special, rotate, pick our origin point. We want an additional 3 of them at an angle of 90 degrees. And I can say copy, and that will give us the rest of it. All right, so now we have all those bars. If we look at this in our rendered view, we can see how nicely they sit there. And now what we can do is we can go to our rebar sets and start dealing with the ligatures, so we can show how we do the alternating stuff. So if we go a cross section, again, we just going to make sure that we pick the R10 as a tie, and the class I'm going to make 5. And then for the start offset, which I'm going to start at the bottom from, well, I think Tekla will pick a direction from the bottom. I'm going to say I want 100 millimeters there, like before in the component, and 50 millimeters on top. And the spacings I'm going to keep exact. And well, let's do this. Let's say we want distribution by 200, and we'll figure out the spacing as an exact later. So once I hover over this, I can say OK. And now you can see how Tekla puts in the ligages for us there. And I can see we've got an issue there. We need to move it a bit, but on the side we picked it precisely. So what we can do quickly is just go and fix that up by going to our plan again, and we can look at this. And I'll switch off the direct modification just momentarily. Click on it, and then all we need to do is juggle with this. So if I make that 55, it pushes it in, and still not quite. So if I make it 56, that's perfect. So we got that 100%. Now all we need to do is we need to pick the painter and then click on this by holding in the shift key, click on that one, and say modify. And it then updates all the cover and all of those. They sit nicely in the corner. So that's perfect. Okay, now back to the 3D rendered mode, so we can just see what's happened here. So in here, we need to look at the spacing quickly. So if I go in elevation, that's probably going to be the best. So we know if I click on this, let's just hover, slightly turn it just quickly to see where Tekla is. Oh, I've got to put my direct modification back. Never forget to do that. If I click on that, we can see our direction arrow. So Tekla has decided to use the bottom as the start. So if we go Control P to get it in elevation again, we can then say start 100 at the bottom is good, 50 at the top is good, and then for our distribution we can go exact spacing. Now we know we've got, now these are spacings, so we need 9 at 100 millimeters at the bottom. That will give us 10 bars. So if we just enter there, we'll see them. That's 10 bars. And then we have an X amount. I'm just going to go 5 at 200. We don't know what that is. I'm going to figure it out now. In the middle, and then on the top, we know we've got 3 spaces at 50, which will give us 4 bars. So if I do that, we can see what's happened here now. We've got our spacing at the bottom correct. We've got our spacing at the top again, but we're short on the inside. So if we're looking at that, it looks like we need at least another 3. So if I change that to 8, for instance, and I say enter, if I say enter, we can then see that we've got the exact spacing we require. So if I just click on the side, so we've on this first meter, we've got half spacings at 100, 10 bars, and then we have 200s up till there, and then we have 50 exactly. So you know, that worked out pretty well with exact spacing. So what we need to do now is we need to put in the diagonals. So if I go Shift Tab just to get to that again. So I'm working on plan 0, which means at the bottom. So what I can do to draw the diagonal, I can head over to Rebar and I can go to More and I can pick Point Input. And then again, just make sure that all my settings are, so it's R1015. It's a color, let's make that red. So just to see the difference, let's keep it the same start and end as before, and it's keeping the same exact spacings as before. So let's just run with that as a start, because it's pretty much going to give us a bar on top of that one, and we can just tweak it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start in the center of the concrete there, to there, to there, to there, and then back to there, and then middle mouse to accept the shape. And then what I'm going to do is just rotate it on its side, and I'm going to say start at the bottom of the column as my start and go all the way up to the top to that intersection. So if I just rotate slightly, you'll see that's the top of the column, and that will give us our red bars there. Now what's really important is if we look at Control P from the top, it's gone out to the outside fibers because it doesn't see this as a face. If I click on it and I enable my leg visibility, you can see the face is along that. There's no concrete line there. That's why it's showing it on the center. If there was a concrete face, it would have applied the cover. So in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to click on the bar and then just swing around and pick the first face and make that face an additional offset of 15 millimeters. And then what I'm going to do is click the next one, change that to 15 as well. And then I'll flick over to the other side and add an additional offset of 15 millimeters, and click here and add an additional of 15 millimeters. Now 15 millimeters was just calculated based on the fact that this is 25 millimeters and I'm working with the as the skew dimension, so it's the shorter one of the two, so that will give us 15 millimeters to the end. Okay, so now that we've got that and it's correct, what we can do now is we can start splitting these up. So what we can do, if we click on the, maybe we should just look at the spacing quickly. So if I go back to the elevation, this one, we can pick the red ones and I'll switch the leg visibility off. Make sure we pick the red ones, which is the diagonals. And instead of using 100, we can just say, bring us 80 and just make sure we're not touching anywhere. So 80 looks good. So 80 will pretty much then be in sync with all the others all the way to the top. So we should have no dramas. Okay, so that works. So what we can do now is if we go back to our 3D is we can, let's start with the outer leaks first. If I click on those, I can head over to the ribbon and say, give me a splitter and load our standard just to reset anything we want. And then under the bars affected, I want to split every second bar. So if I go split every second bar, And the first affected bar, I want it to be the first bar. So it's going to basically split this one, this one, this one. And if I click on that edge, it splits it. Now you can't really see anything except for a massive lap there. And we'll just right click intercept. If I click on this, you can see every second bar is lapped. And we go back to standard and we change it to custom, and we change the custom to 0. Now we'll see we've got every second bar affected. And now if I click on that again and I say splitter, and instead of splitting every second bar starting at the first, we're going to split every second one starting at the second, and we hover over to this edge. Now you'll finally see the effect. So we've got the split there, and then on the second bar there, and then the third bar there, and the fourth bar there, and so forth. And now all we need to do is, if we click on this bar, we can head over to the end modifier. And on the end modifier, we can again say bar affected every second bar. We want to start at the first bar. We want a hook, but the hook must be 135 degrees. And once we've got that, and let's just zero this hook orientation. And also on this, we're going to say nothing there. And if I hover over this edge here now, it's going to say keep duplicates. So there's a splitter there at the moment. So this is end modifier is in duplication to the splitter. You say keep it. So you can see every second ear is now split. And then what we can do is we can also do this side. But before we click this side, we need to change the affected bar to the second bar. So if we click this side now, again, keep duplicates, it will then give us an ear on every second bar. So you can see how they sort of zigzag up there. Now we can do the same with the red bar. So if I click on the red bar, I can go to splitter first. And again, every second bar starting at the first bar. And I'll hover to the middle of the concrete. Make sure you see this little cyan line going up. So that splits those. And then on this side, I must just change it to split, start at the second bar, hover to this side, and it splits that. So you can see there again, we've got the zigzag effect, split there, and so forth. And now what we need to do is click on these again and say end modifier. So we've got the two selected. So all we need to do is just create one there and say keep duplicates, and then hover over to the other side, and then change this to starting at the first bar, and then hover over to this end and say keep duplicates. So now that's split that correctly. Now we just need to look at these ears because there's a bit of a misalignment here, and I'll explain that now. Now if we go back to the plan, we can see here, if I just isolate this and this main bar here, right click, show and selected, holding in shift, we can see there's a bit of a, it's encroaching into the bar there. Now the reason for that is, at the moment, the end distance is still set to the original, where this face was moved 15 millimeters. So what we need to do is we've got to move this out to 15 millimeters. So if we then grab that bar and grab this end modifier, and we grab this end modifier, there should be two end modifiers in this now. We can hover down to the length adjustment. Adjustment type will be an end offset. And we've got to go minus 15, which is the opposite of the cover we did. And if we then say modify, you can see Tekla then fixes that up. So it's 100% now. Again, if we look at the top, we can see those leagues are 100% now. Redraw all. So now that we've got that, what we can do is, to do the top part, is we can copy the leakages. So if I select that, holding shift, select that one, those two, I can say right click, copy special linear, and we'll copy from the bottom of this column to the bottom of this column, copy. Now you would have probably wondered why I didn't copy the vertical bars. Is because the vertical bars aren't the same. These ones are cranked and this one's hooked. And although you could change your end modifier, value here, these were put in as standard single bars, so there's no end modifier here. So I'm going to use rebar sets to do these verticals quickly, and it's pretty quick. So what we can do is, on these, if I go to longitudinal and make sure I load my N20 mains, I'll set my class back to a blue, a 4. And then for the start and end offset, I'm going to delete those. And then for the distribution, I'm going to pick number of bars. And I want 3 bars down this side. And I think that's it. So if I hover over this, I can then pick that edge and this edge and say OK. And that will give us 3 bars inside the leakages. And the reason it's doing the layer correctly is because these leakages are rebar sets, and rebar sets are aware of each other. So that's why it's putting that in the right point. Now for the other end, what we need to do is we only want 1 bar. So I'm going to change this to 1 bar in the middle. And this column is a 600 column, so middle is 300. So I'm going to set the start offset is 300. And now if I pick that section again and I pick the opposite side, that side, holding shift, the other side, and I say OK, we will then be left with 2 single bars in the middle. And as quick as that, we now have the reinforcement of the top done. So all we need to do is look at the end modifier. So if I click on these and go to end modifier, and I'll reset them by loading my standard, and I can say I do want a 90-degree, and I want an adjustment type of end offset, and I want this to go 150 millimeters into the slab, just like we did with the component. And if I then click on this edge, you can see how it extends this, but the cog is going in the wrong direction. So if I click on that end modifier line again, the hook or rotation, I can then say 180 degrees and it flips it around. And then what I can do is I can click on the opposite side, end modifier. Tekla remembers the settings. I can just hover over that edge. It fixes that up. I can click on this one, end modifier, hover over this edge. It fixes that. And then lastly, pick this end modifier, this edge, and just like that, we have now completed that column. So if I go workflow entire model, and let's just go to our rendered view, not this view and not that view, but this one. If we go entire model and we look at this, we now have 2 bars, and maybe just for the sake of being the same, I'm going to change the class of these, and there's only one. I'm going to make them I think we used red. So if I just change this to a red, modify, that changes the middle zone and the top zone to red and the bottom zone to red, modify. Okay, that's now the same as that one, and we'll do the same here. If I double click on this one, we can just use a 2 there, a 2 there, and a 2 there, and say modify. So the color coding is now the same. Now if we look at those two, and also just for simplicity, if I just do a redraw, it should go away. Okay. So if I look at that, those two are modeled in 2 very different methods. So we've got single bars at the bottom here for our verticals with rebar sets for stirrups and leakages, and on the top we've got rebar sets vertical and horizontal. And in this one we've got a component, and on the top we have a modified component of the one in the bottom. Now hopefully that will be helpful. I mean, normally in buildings like this, you can suffice with something like this, and you can save that away. I mean, if you double click on this and you know you've got this as a type A or type B or whatever, or a type 81 column, whatever you want to call it, you can save it away here and just call it up whenever you need it once the save is setting. So it's a very, very quick way to model a building and to detail a building is using components. And in this case, they are definitely recommended. But in the case where you need to do things where the component does not allow, like the alternating ears that you get on the leakages, you would then resort to this, for instance. And hopefully this has explained how we do that and accomplishing the same result as the component, but with a bit of extras that's not built into the components currently. Hope you enjoy it, and in the next video we will deal with circular columns.